Good morning, Opening Pathways viewers, or whatever time it is while you're watching this. This is Tom LeNoble, and I'm really, really happy to have you here today. I'm also really happy about my guest today. David Satterwhite, who is the CEO of Kronos, is here with us today, and I'm interested in learning a lot from you, David. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. It's good to be
So
here.
I mean, it's great to have you. I'd love to know to get started here today a little bit about Kronos and what got you started. What sparked the idea?
Yeah, well, I joined Kronos about 2 years ago, and the company had been founded a number of years before, and had been on a path of growth. And as happens with a lot of small tech companies, got to a stage where there were some challenges that needed to be addressed, and the board felt and the major investors felt that it was best that they got somebody who had a different set of skills and experience to come in and take over the company. I had spent have spent 22 years being a CRO, so Chief Revenue Officer in charge of all the revenue aspects in scaling software companies. So my entire career pretty much has been, or the majority of it has been helping lead the revenue side of that scaling aspect of organizations, the go-to-market side. So when there's a company that needs a leader, a CEO that's where that's really the focus of what's needed, then I'm the kind of person you might look at and have a conversation with. So that sparked it, started it off. I got excited because my whole career, most meaningful things that have been taught either to me or by me have happened through mentorship. And so the idea of applying this to software in such a way that organizations that are larger could do this at scale in a secure way, such that it could really include everybody across the organization to capture the majority of employees versus what typically happens, which is of a small minority of employees get the real mentorship in an organization is kind of traditionally what's happened. Really intrigued me. So got engaged and involved, and it's been awesome, and had a great time with the team.
Great. We're going to learn more about exactly what Kronos does in a few minutes. But for right now, I want to go back a little bit.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I want to hear what a little bit about the backstory. I want to go back, 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 back and hear what sort of role models did you have early on, or who was it that influenced you, you think, most to become David today?
I always say, how far back do you want to go, Tom?
It's up to you.
Um, I won't spend a lot of time on my parents, but I am fortunate to have had both passed at this point, but wonderful parents who were both educated and had a growth mindset, which became a big part of me growing up. I would say if I was going to attribute a couple of main things to my parents, it was always learn. Okay, you're never done learning. You're never done getting educated. And secondly, be kind, be supportive of others. We're not just here in this space on this planet in this universe for ourselves. We're here to impact others. And so those two influences were big. I also had some. I went to UC Berkeley. I had some really good professors that had some good influence on me in several different ways in terms of seeing the world holistically. I actually studied history of all things at university, and really enjoyed that, and recommend it highly for others because I think it gives you that foundation of a whole view. We don't study history enough, and so not coincidentally, we often make the same mistakes over and over again. So that was a big influence and an important foundation for me. And then I found my soulmate, my life partner early, like at 20 years old type of thing, pretty early in life. And so we have grown up together our entire adult life. And so if I was going to pick one person who's probably influenced me the most, it would be her. in many different ways. The overwhelming commitment to me and to our family and to our life is something that has always been inspiring and has had a big influence. So when you get past those kind of personal relationships, life relationships, and start to get into the professional world, I once again had developed really good mentors. And I say developed because I always think it's important that it's not lost on people that mentors don't fall out of the sky. And part of what we're trying to do at Kronos is help organizations really juice the whole mentorship process and get that going for a lot more people. But that's not going to change my evangelism around people finding mentors, creating mentors, because oftentimes those are the best. And if you're working for or you're in a good organization that is helping you with building mentors and matching you up with mentors, that's great, and that's what we do. But in the end, kind of like the growth mindset, it's still we're accountable for what we learn,
Yes.
how we grow. We're also accountable for the mentors and the relationships that we build and the learning we do, given the people we interact with. So I started trying to build mentors early on in each profession, in each organization, company that I was in along the way. I started actually, of all things, in public accounting. So believe it or not, went from history to public accounting. And the reason for that was I had a recommendation to get a PhD in history, but we were already married, already pregnant with our first child, and I needed to get a job. I also didn't fancy myself spending a lot of my life in libraries researching. I'm much more of a people person. It's the people of history that fascinate me the most. So rather than study it, I kind of wanted to go out and start making it. And so I got recruited by a firm. I think they called them the Big Eight in those days, Deloitte and Touche, and did audits for a couple of years, which was great experience, great foundation, but I didn't have a lot of passion for it. And fortunately, there was an amazing head of HR there that helped me kind of think about what's the next step, what I should be doing. That journey on that early stage of your career of finding out what your passion is, what's your
Yes.
element, what's the thing that you're going to get into and thrive in. And I ended up, a friend of my wife's passed my resume on to someone at Oracle, and I got introduced to Oracle in the tech world. And went there, and all they cared about in those days, early 90s, was what school you went to and did you have a high GPA? And that got me in the door. And I did HR for a year, and it was great. It was a wonderful experience. Again, some great people to learn from. Really, how do you tackle this HR function when everything is focused on technology, and how do we support people and help put them in a position to thrive at every level. And I got to work on everything from our working with our immigration employees for candidates that we were bringing in from other countries to setting up our international training program, various different things. I ended up being the HR partner for Mark Benioff. You may remember that, know that name, the founder of Salesforce.com. Well, he was running the inside sales team at Oracle in those days, and I was his HR person, from the HR team. And we were having a conversation one day, and I was talking about honestly needing to make more money. We were now on our second child. We're living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and in HR, that's not a lot of money to be made in general as a profession. So he suggested I should go into sales. So I did. I went into the inside sales team and never looked back. So that started me off in a career of tech sales.
Yeah.
And there again, I had really great mentors and teachers along the way. From my first sales leader, a woman named Shari Simon, who I actually ended up reconnecting with a few months ago, first time in a long time, but really helped me with that transition from HR to sales. And this is what's so important about mentors and sponsors, is that at a time when you feel very vulnerable, very not up to the task, oftentimes it's those people that give you the space and say things like she said to me, which was, "I know you're struggling right now, but I think you're doing all the right things. Give it some more time. I think you're going to be great. And
Yes, yes.
I did great. And then, those kinds of moments in your career, in your life, so many of us can point back to as being just a crucial time that kicked us off.
Yeah, I love these thoughts on
Yeah.
mentorship, and
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons why I love to coach people. I think it's really, really great to help people see they have their own answers,
Yeah.
uh, and I have this thing I think I shared with you called the haystack method, where people think they're trying to find a needle in a haystack. And for me, it's quite simple. You just help them remove the hay and move on. I want to go into a little bit deeper discussion here. I want to know about your leadership style, what informed it, what leadership principles that you live by and you influence your organization with. So tell us about your leadership style.
Yeah. Um, at the very highest level, I think of it as balancing um, two things from a culture perspective, from a leadership culture perspective, and that's performance, a lot of things underneath that in terms of what that means, and being a great teammate. I think of performance sort of encapsulates all of the drive, work ethic, goal orientation, get stuff done to achieve goals mentality. I am definitely the kind of person that where urgency is part of me, part of what I do. I kind of believe that if it's worth doing, it's worth doing now. And so there's a lot of drive to get things done. I think in my experience in organizations, a lot of what stalls organizations is getting stuck in the upfront strategic conversation, which is so important, but we can't get stuck in it. At some point, we have to start doing things. We have to make some decisions, start taking steps, and learn from those, and then iterate, maybe pivot depending on what we learn. But until you start doing something, it's hard to learn and understand if you're on the right path. But as important as performance is for a person who's been in sales most of his career, performance is key. But as important as it is, just as important from a leadership perspective is, are you a net positive member of the team? Or are you a net negative member of the team? Right? I mean, you can be either. And there's a lot of examples, and I've seen a lot in my career. Sure, most everybody has seen a lot of those examples in their career, where you have somebody who might be a stellar individual performer, but they're literally having a negative impact on the performance of many other people. And organizations that let that continue, I think, are really struggle at some point, generally speaking. Um, so I've never gone that way. I have let go of the number one sales rep in three different companies, not lightly, and certainly after a lot of coaching. But in the end, we have to walk the walk, and employees, team members, leaders that are having a net negative impact on everybody around them is just not something you can put up with and stand for. It's just you've got to make a change. So those two things are kind of the guiding light from a culture perspective in terms of leadership. I I I think especially my expertise in software companies. Software companies again at a high level have three things. We have code, we have money of some kind, and we have people. So much of leadership is, what am I doing with those three resources? And the code, and to a large part the money, gets leveraged and done by the people. So people is a huge focus of me from a leadership perspective.
Good.
Think of the difference between management and leadership is, management is about making sure you have all the right people in the right roles doing the right work. Leadership is about, are you setting people up to thrive? Are you helping them do the best work of their lives? And they're both really important. You get these discussions sometimes, what's more important, management or leadership? Well, they're both important. And I've had great mentors, back to the mentorship conversation, all along the way of both. I mean, the first the first head of worldwide sales that inspired me to go down that path, a man named Bob Spinner. Um, he just was notorious for leading with emotion and passion and raw just energy, and I really saw how important that was to what we were doing. There's multiple components to how we get there, but getting the majority of your people to thrive is what it's all about. Organizations truly only reach their greatest potential when their people do.
Yeah. What's been your biggest turning point at Kronos since you've been there?
Um, it probably came at the beginning of this year when the new administration came in, simply because though Kronos doesn't, we have a mentorship solution. We also have what we call a connection communities solution that is leveraged for ERGs in general. Um, Both of these solutions are are often used in addition to just making sure we capture specific groups of people that we want to, high performance individuals, ramping people up, career development. There's lots of different types of programs. Um, but but in general, it revolves around a concern around retaining employees and including groups of people that maybe aren't always included in the normal sort of mentorship by water cooler approach. And the new administration brought in, again, politics aside, just brought in a whole very different focus, both for the government, but then also just kind of rotated over to enterprises as well. So with what was a pretty big focus on inclusivity and even and being leveraged a lot for DEI. Obviously, a pretty big change of focus, at least for now, in the United States, and that we definitely needed to come back and look at our positioning and our approach. And really, in the end, it's all about the value you provide to your customers. And our customers were coming to us and asking, like, how do we navigate this, right? How do we programs that we may have been focused on before, mentorship for women or whatever certain specific types of programs were not going to be something that they were comfortable with given the environment. What do we do? And we needed to help them with, okay, well, be more inclusive, meaning spread that out more to make it more available to other people in the organization and such. So we really worked on how do we add value to our customers in a different type of environment, and focus on providing value in the solution, which I can get into if you want to in terms of the specifics of the solution. But that's been an important point for us, and we delivered a really important feature in our solution, that provides value during the mentorship relationship, by serving up prompts and suggestions for conversations. And that's
Okay.
been really, really important. So we needed to just adjust to what was going on in the world. Doesn't mean we're changing our guiding light or what we're trying. Again, in the end, we're trying to help organization include everybody in their organization in mentoring programs, in connection programs, with the ability to thrive. We're working on peer-to-peer conversation support and one-on-one with your manager support. These are the things that in general, when you double click on effectiveness and engagement, that employees point to is what helps them thrive and do the best work of their lives.
Yeah, I want to get a little more into how you think and what you think
Yeah.
about things personally. Tell me, you've been at Kronos for a while, you've had this great career at software companies. I want to know, what have you learned about trust on this journey?
Trust. I, I think when people talk about trust, oftentimes you reflect on honesty. So I sort of think about the table stakes of trust is, can you trust that someone is being honest with you in terms of what they're saying? But so much of what for me trust is all about, and where I focus on trust is, um, Can I trust you to fulfill your commitments? Um, is there a trust in terms, can I trust you to live our values? Can I trust you to bring your highest performance every day? Can I trust you to bring your net positive influence on other members of the team every day? Can I trust you to show up with your best self? Can I trust you to be authentic with me so that I can in turn be authentic and help you with what, because that's the job of the CEO. The job of the CEO obviously has other components, but I think in large part it's how do I help every member of the team succeed? And the more I can trust that person to show up with authenticity and ready to go and being honest with the communication, the more I can help them be successful. Um, Certainly in every part of my life, trust is a key component. I was fortunate that I had a mom who taught me to forgive because I think forgiveness is something we do for ourselves. If you carry around grudges and things like that, it's really you that gets hurt in the end.
Yes, it is. It is.
But just because you forgive doesn't mean that you've come around to trust again. Trust is it takes a little bit longer to build, and it can be repaired, but it takes some building. So I, for myself, how I try to live that value and live that trust is to show up in a very authentic way. And in the management ranks, when you're new as a leader, back when I was or early on as a leader, you're kind of trying to learn what's the right approach. For example, some of the old kind of leadership tenets were around, only show your work self, don't show your personal self, don't get too friendly, don't get too connected, don't get too, all these types of things. And I tried each one of them on for size that, you're learning as you're going along. But what I came to was that for me, not only is there nothing wrong with connecting with the people I work with, it's super powerful. Not just for them, but also for me. It brings out the best in me, and I hope brings out the best in others when we connect at a true authentic level. And then we're really set up to be successful together, and that works as teams. Teams that are I've certainly been part of dysfunctional teams, but teams that are working really well together, and I've been fortunate to be members of several of them. There's an incredible trust and bond that happens amongst the team. And some of those teams, I mean, we get together to this day, from time to time, because the bonds are so strong. Some of them you end up following each other to different organizations because they're so strong. But either way, whether you do or not, I think so much of success in life is how many people have we impacted, and it's hard to impact people in a positive way if you haven't built a foundation of trust.
Yeah, I think most of us as humans know when someone's not being authentic. And I find that when I'm just who I am, that not only is life feel a little bit easier, I think tend to get a
Yeah.
lot more done and people want to help a lot more and engage a lot more. So I'm all for this idea of let's just be our authentic selves. Tell me something. How does David define success beyond the typical metrics and numbers and stuff we usually have to monitor ourselves? What does success mean to you?
Yeah. How I usually answer that question, you took it off the table right away, is, there's certainly the metrics and financial components, and those are real and those are important. Um, but you get to a point in your career where there's so many other things that are really important and the reason why we do what we do and we love what we do. For me, the um, the real purpose, the number one thing that I take away from my work is the impact on others, and the number of people. If you ask me the question, what are you proudest of in your career, be related to this, which is it's pointing to the people over the life of my career that have been able to move on in their career and in their personal lives and be successful with whatever that meant to them. The number of people that have mentored or have been part of helping support or sponsor that have gone into leadership roles or CEO roles or founder roles or what have you. And honestly, when you build these kinds of authentic, trusting relationships we're talking about, you even get in a position where you provide some personal support at times to each other, and it's those relationships and that positive impact that I value the most in terms of what we do. And I love the when a set of people get together with trust and authenticity and a focus on performance and being a great teammate, it's just amazing what we can accomplish.
It is. I agree. What values are non-negotiable in your organization?
Yeah. Um, I go back to the two big values around I if you're not someone who um, is focused on getting stuff done, that's not going to work. There's just no way to get around that with like in the end we have to get stuff done, we have to move forward, we have to achieve, we've got to hit goals, and people who don't have a sense of urgency towards doing that and achieving things, I don't tend to mesh well. And then the other, of course, is people who are a net negative influence on others.
Yeah.
And this is increasingly, I just have no patience. If you're a mean person, if you're someone who is focused on negative politics, if you're someone who um, is actively undermining others, I mean, any of those things, I just have no patience for that.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Nor
I
do, nor do other employees.
Right, exactly, and that's the irony sometimes of this. How some organizations let this continue, not realizing the negative impact that they're having on all these other employees. I will say, lack of communication is a pet peeve of mine. So I'm a communicator. I'm not sure how you work together as human beings if you're not communicating, and I expect others to be as well. So I'm not saying that I'm expecting a 5 minute response at any time during the day, but someone who you send a Slack to or what have you, and you don't hear from for days, that's a challenge for me. Because again,
Yeah.
I think there's an implied lack of respect there at any level. So it's not just about responding to me. It's part of the value. We literally have it painted into our values as a company, communicating with each other, responding with each other, being there to help each other. It happens through communication. These things go through, I mean, this is the vehicle with which human beings interact, where we perform, where we're great teammates, I mean, authenticity, it all comes through communication. So if you're not, give you another little example. So in this virtual world, right, where so many meetings and so many things are now virtual. Well, putting on your video is really important, because the difference between just being a voice with a black background and being a human being on the video is a universe of difference. And I tell leaders all the time, half of leadership is showing up. And if you're going to be virtual, showing up means being on video. So we as a company, as an organization, have a part of our value, part of our good communication value, which is one of our 4 pillars, is showing up on video when it's a virtual meeting. So anyway, some examples of
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the easiest ways to lose your best people is to not address the people who aren't performing. It's the easiest way to have people that are doing a great job disappear on you. So tell me, what's the boldest vision for Kronos in the next 5 years?
well, that's a good question. It's we truly want to are building a platform, building out a platform, continue to enhance a software platform that really enables you to make your entire employee base more productive. And honestly, sometimes I think that a challenge we have is that the impact we strive to make is too bold. Um, I'll give you just a couple of thoughts here. 76% of employees globally say they're disengaged. This is a Gallup poll that they do from time to time. It pretty consistently is around 75%. So think of that for a second. 75% of employees say they're disengaged. If you're disengaged, are you thriving? Are you being the most productive for the organization as you can possibly be? It's one of the biggest problems going on in business that is not talked about all that often. It goes in phases. Sometimes it is talked about. You get a lot more blogs, a lot more discussion around it. But I think there's a lot of feeling that we don't know what to do about it. Well, we do. When you double click on this challenge, you really come down to some basic tenets. People feel like they're not being developed. Well, this is where mentorship at scale comes in. They feel like they're not connected to anybody at the organization. Well, this is where connection communities comes in to connect people in different types of communities in these organizations. If you don't get somebody connected pretty early on in their life cycle as an organization, you're going to lose them. In the US, 30% of first-year employees leave in the first year. 30%. It's insane. So they look at manager effectiveness. Is my manager effective in helping me do my job? Is my purpose aligned? Like, does my company even care that what I have and what I bring is being aligned with something that can do something great for the organization? I mean, these are pretty basic things, and our goal is to help with each one of these and help organizations put their employees in a position to thrive. Because again, organizations only reach their greatest potential when their people do. So how do you make sure that they're all in position to do that? So we've looked at the research, we've dove into what the meaning is behind these, trying to really provide solutions to help organizations do this effectively at scale. Because again, this is a key piece. When you're 50 people, Tom, in your organization, you can get to everybody.
You
But when you're
can't.
500 or 5,000 or 50,000, or like as you get larger, you just can't. You've got to have
Yeah.
some ability to do this at scale.
Yeah, I know in my work in HR, it's always been interesting. I'm just leading people of these different levels of the number of employees and how the base of employees shifts. People come into early startups, and as soon as it gets
Yeah.
big enough, somebody doesn't know my name, then I'm just a little shaky being here. Well, that's when other people are attracted to it, or
Right.
when things are actually getting financially stable.
Right.
That takes some of the juice out of it for some people, where that's when other
Yeah.
people are ready to come. And that keeps on going up, as you say, into tens of thousands of employees. Tell me, David, what are you most hopeful for the world right now?
Mhm. That we once again learn how to discuss opposing views together in a civil way. I think one of the most important things, especially in our country right now, or most, I mean, there's no limit of important challenges, but we become so polarized that it's hard to even have a conversation with someone that has different views than you. And it's one of my most favorite things to do. So I'm the person who goes to a social engagement and I'll pick the left or the right. I don't care. My views are varied in terms of different things. But I kind of will choose based on the person I'm talking to so we can have a good debate, so we can have a good conversation. And we learn things. But the number of people who can't even approach the conversation because they are so maniacally entrenched in the dogma of whatever it is that's been radicalized, and there's a lot of that they haven't broken out. And it's not the days when we all listen to the same news, so we can talk about how objective it was, but it was more objective than it is today in terms of listening to the same. So we had the same information. Now you pick who you're going to listen to, and if you don't break out of that and listen to others, you are fed one set of views and it becomes harder and harder to allow yourself to look at someone and talk to someone, communicate with someone, connect with someone who has a different set of views. And that's
Yes.
so my wife and I both we basically go around the different types of stations. I mean, I read Wall Street Journal, The Economist. I'll watch CNN. I'll watch some Fox News. I'll watch the financial news. I mean, I'm trying to find as varied a set of inputs as possible, because it's the only way to kind of get a broad spectrum of what's
Yes.
going on in the world. And so I think it's really important that we get better at being tolerant of each other and having different opposing views and be able to have the discussions so that we can learn more from each other and align ultimately around what's most important.
Yeah, I think it's called balance. We could use a little balance. So tell me, David, let's say somebody that's thinking about getting off on a start and they're thinking about being a leader, or they're thinking about maybe found being a founder of a company, and they see this podcast. What would you want them to know from your experience if they're starting their journey?
Yeah, I think it's there's two pretty different paths in terms of whether you're going to start a company or ultimately help founders grow and scale something they've already founded. Not that you can't do both in your career, but they're pretty different skills. I think there's a skill set that I've never. It's not to say that I couldn't do it, but that I've never pursued, which is to start something from nothing. And and some of the things that requires, things like a financial wherewithal so that you can actually do that at the early stages when there's no money coming in. There's a lot of different pieces to that. Generally speaking, especially in the world of software, there's also a very product orientated nature that needs to be there. It's about, can you build a product, but then you've got to have this ability to test the market. If you build a product in the absence of connecting it to a go-to-market and a customer and who's going to ultimately monetize it for you, you really run the risk of building something nobody wants. Now, sometimes people get it right and that works. But we don't want to count on luck. So I don't know if I've got when I think of founders, and I've often said I should write a book on for founders from a non-founder. Oftentimes, one of the biggest challenges that founders have is that the very skills and talents that allowed you to go from 0 to 1 get in your way when you want to go from 1 to 50. When I say, it's not talking, millions of dollars here, right? So, $0 to $1 million of annual recurring revenue versus a million or whatever, somewhere in that age, 5 million to 50 million. It's so in that early stage, so much of the success comes from how do I do something with less? How do I find a way to accomplish things without resources, without hiring more people, without frugality is a super key in that early stage, figuring things out. The startup founder really has to be part of everything at that stage and into everything to help make sure that everything's going how it needs to go. I wrote a blog once talking about this transition as being kind of transitioning from basketball to football. Basketball to the uninformed observer, you would watch a game and you'd think everybody's kind of doing the same thing. Yes, they're called different things, but they all kind of do the same thing. In football, successful American football teams, there's a strategy that they're all aligned around, and then you have experts that do different roles. And someone who's an expert receiver doesn't try to be the center unless there's an emergency, which generally doesn't happen that often. People have their roles that they're secure in. So that transition from basketball to football, that scaling from the startup phase into the scaling phase, a lot of founders get in their own way because they don't want to spend money. They don't want to build a leadership team. They don't want to hire salespeople. They think, well, any salesperson I hire should be able to sell it as well as me. I tell founders all the time, no one will sell it as well as you. Get that out of your head. No one will ever sell it as well as you. Now, it's a rule that's meant to be broken. There's some founders maybe who aren't good at selling it, but from what I've observed in my career, most founders that are successful are phenomenal salespeople because they birthed They birthed this company. They birthed this product. No one will ever be as passionate about it as you, and that passion comes across in the sales process. So when you build out a sales team, you can't have that be your bar. You've got to think of it as how do I bring people to, as close to that level as I can at a scalable way. So there's lots of these different things that are harder
Yes.
as you grow. So, but back to your question, make sure you've got good mentors in the process, whether you're a startup CEO or a professional CEO coming in. Remember that, especially now switching over to a professional CEO, someone coming in who's not the founder. One of the things that is often forgotten is the first job of any new employee, no matter what level they are, joining an organization, is to fit in. People forget this at their peril. Now, fit in doesn't mean forget who you are. Fit in doesn't mean ignore your own values, your own authenticity at all. Fit in means build some relationships, read the room, understand the culture, start to build some trust with others in the organization before you come in and change everything.
Yes.
Depending on the situation and the organization, that might be a month, that might be a year. A lot of things depend on the length of time, but spend some time making those connections. They will pay off the entire time you're there.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Wise words today. I encourage you to write that book. David Satterwhite, thank you so much for being on Opening Pathways today. This is David Satterwhite. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Kronos, joining me on Opening Pathways. And it's been a delight. Thank you, David.
absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Yes. And to my viewers, this is Opening Pathways with Tom LeNoble, and I will see you next time.